Okay, so I don't know, can someone paste the project question either on the chat section in the scope? Someone has finally sent it. Okay, is this the project or this is something else? I thought there was a project I dropped for you guys.
It's an assignment, I think.
Okay, is there not like a project that dropped?
The one of yesterday, because this is what we were given yesterday, to turn in 2 weeks.
Okay, I thought someone sent like a project where you guys were asked to use Terraform to create a load balancer and all those kind of things.
I think that's from LMS. That's a
Okay,
project from LMS. Look at Caleb.
yeah, that's basically what we're focusing on tonight, not the assignment. When
Okay,
you are done with the
okay,
project, you can use that idea to do the assignment. The assignment is something that is very
okay.
easy.
Hello.
Okay, is that the assignment that require the domain name? Hello, hello, sir.
I'm not with you guys now, so I don't know if you can paste it on this chat in this call so that we can look at it.
Yeah, I'll paste it. Don't worry, I'll paste it. Just give me.
Okay, so for those that don't have a domain name, right? For those that don't have a domain name, um, okay. Hope you guys can see my screen.
Yeah, but it's sorry.
Okay. So for those that don't have a domain name, and for those that have the what's it called? The I don't know who's okay. So for those that don't have a domain name, you can basically just go to the GitHub Students Pack, and that this is basically for those that have the GitHub Students Pack. So you can just go to your browser, type in GitHub. Okay, so they've dropped the mini project, which is what we're going to be looking at here. So you can basically go to your browser, like I said before, search for GitHub Students Pack, and you can basically click on the first link, right? And now here you can see your GitHub Students Pack. You would want to sign in. If you don't have like a what's it called an account with them, you can just sign up, right? But here we're going to sign in. And now that we're in, we can see the GitHub page. We now want to come to this section where it says students, right? And basically click on the student program or student developer pack. Okay, so this is basically where you fill in the I'm a student and the whole process from here, right? But you can basically there's basically just one thing I want to show you guys, which is something that is very very important. So you can click on Explore Student Program and scroll down. That's basically when you have gotten your student pack or whatever. You can scroll down here, right? And you can basically click on the Student Developer pack. And when it opens, you can also scroll down. Here you see different kind of what's it called? Different kind of services that you'll be given access to. I get what I'm saying. The whole benefit you're going to be getting. So now you can create a domain name for free, right? On either Namecheap. This is one of the things you get from in the student pack for free from either Namecheap, or you can also get it from either Namecheap
Hello,
or
boss. There,
name.com. Yeah.
there are other ones too that are free, like Netflix.
Yeah, so you can either get it from name.com or .tech domains, right? Any of these domain name, that is if you have the students pack. That you get what I'm saying. Now, if you do not have the students pack, there's another way you can do it. You can also get it from GoDaddy, right? So you can go to GoDaddy and look for a domain name here, right? This is your site. So you can basically just click on anyone, web hosting plus free domain, and you can see their price here, $2.99 per month. So let's just basically go to their domain name section to look for a domain name, right? So search for a domain name, and here you can basically just type in the domain name you want to search for, right? So let's say if I'm looking for Teddy search, right? So this is one domain name. This is 1.57 pounds for the first year, right? You can still scroll down to look for some that are way cheaper than this. You can still scroll down to look for some that are way cheaper than this, like 30.world, 1.57 pounds, right? So let's just go for this one. Let's see. Okay, so here you can choose domain protection or no domain protection, right? But since it's just 1 month you are going for this, since it's basically just 1 month you are going for this, you can just choose maybe because this is like £7 now, right? So you can choose either no domain protection, anyone that works for you if your budget doesn't reach it. I get what I'm saying. So from there, continue to cart, then you can basically just buy the domain name. There are still other domain providers out there, right? You can still go to YouTube and research on how to get a free domain name. There are some that are even way cheaper than this, right? So the most important thing is just for you to have a domain name. That's the number one most important thing, right? And since that is how that works, now we'll basically have to, yeah, someone said you can use hugohost.com, right? I guess those ones, their own is in Naira, unlike this ones, their own is in dollars or so. Okay, so this is their website, and we can go for domains, and let's choose our domain, and let's say we choose a domain of 30 again, and register domain. Okay, so let's say 30. Okay, so you can see like a bunch of other domain name here. So you can see this one is just 3,500 naira. This one is just 8,500 naira, 30.online, right? There are others that will be way cheaper than that. So scrolling down here, you can see all their prices. This one is 1,300 naira, 30.com.ng. So if we add this to cart, so let's basically continue, right? So this is it. And yeah, you get the name server 1, name server 2, name server 3, and you can basically continue with your purchase, right? So those are the two ways you can get like a domain name. Yeah, so those are the two ways you can get a domain name. Now we'll basically have to look at the okay, now looking at the question first said using Terraform create 3 EC2 instances, right? And put them behind an elastic load balancer. Then make sure after applying your plan, Terraform exports the public IP addresses of these 3 instances to a file called host inventory. Then get a .com.ng or any other domain name for yourself. Be creative, right? This will be a domain you can keep using. And set it up with AWS Route 53 within your Terraform plan. Then add an A record for subdomain Terraform-test that points to your Elastic Load Balancer IP address. So the end goal, they said your project is complete when one visits terraform-test.yourdomainname.com and it shows the content from your instances while rotating between the servers as you refresh to display their unique content, right? So what basically that means is that when you are refreshing your screen using the load balancer, right, it should basically show different content. So what we're going to do here is we're basically going to print out the IP address of the current machine that we're on, and we'll send the IP address into a file, into an HTML file. So when we keep rotating, it keeps showing the IP address of the particular instance that we're basically on, right? And at the end, they said submit both the Ansible and Terraform file created, right? So basically, what is Ansible? I don't know. Can any other person answer this question? What is Ansible? Sorry, what is Terraform rather? How does Terraform work? So nobody here understand what Terraform is. Okay, someone said it helps for provisioning. Please unmute your mic and speak. This is an interactive class, right? Someone said it helps for provisioning.
Yes, Terraform helps for provisioning of servers via Ansible, like to configure them.
Okay. Is there any other what's it called? Any other explanation?
I think that's the basic explanation of those two languages. Terraform is basically for provisioning of the servers.
Okay. Okay. So with that said, let's basically start then because Terraform is very simple and it is very basic. There's really nothing that is there's really nothing about Terraform that is that difficult. So we're going to start by launching a what's it called? An instance or the DigitalOcean server. Okay. Um.
What does he want? I'm coming.
Okay. So we have our server here. We're going to choose Frankfurt. Scrolling down, Ubuntu 22.24 LTS, and every other thing. Select the keep here, and we're going to be naming this server Terraform, and create droplets basically. Okay, so now before we even begin to run Terraform and any kind of thing like this, the first thing we need to focus on is creating a user on AWS, right? Since everything is going to be running on AWS, we need to create a user that Terraform can have access to. So we have to go to AWS, and also after creating a user on AWS, we also have to make Terraform access this user, right? So after creating our droplet or our instance, right? The next thing we want to do is to install AWS CLI. I get what I'm saying. The next thing we want to do is to install AWS CLI so that we can basically have access to all this, everything that is on AWS.
Mentor, what code did you just impute?
That's the MFA code.
Okay, you manufactured it, or
Yeah, you
I don't
can
know, uh,
make a change to it. That's from your account.
from my AWS account?
Yeah, so it can be more secure.
Okay.
Okay, so let me basically just pause this here. Okay. Okay, so now that we're here, like I said, we need to create an IAM user, right, for our Terraform machine, right? So we come here to the search bar and we type in IAM. So let's see this.
Are we recording, boss?
Yeah, yeah, everything's recorded. So now that
Okay.
we're here, we come to the IAM user, we scroll down to our users, right? We click on users and we create a new user. So what name do you want to give this user? Let's give this name mastermind, right? And let's provide user access to the AWS management console, right? It's optional, but let's just give it access, right? Okay, so let's just untick this, right? It's not really useful because this Terraform is basically like a CLI tool. We are basically not using the console for anything. So let's just create next. And okay, so we need to attach a policy directly and scroll down, and we want to basically give it administrator access, right? So when you click on this, scroll down, you basically see this is the first thing, meaning that you're giving it access to every single thing. So you can basically choose um what you want to give it access to. So if it's only EC2 you want to give it access to, you can come here and search EC2. You will basically see only EC2 policies you can give it. So we're basically giving it access to everything, administrator access. So we're going to click on that and scroll down, and we're going to next. And basically that's everything, right? So we're going to create this user. Okay, so now that we've created this user, the next thing we want to do now is we want to create the user's access key and secret access key. So now we have to click on this user, right? And now that we're in the user, we need to scroll to security credentials here. Now that we're here, we need to scroll down and scroll down to access keys. This is where we create an access key. So we're going to click on create access key, and brings us to this page. You choose the second one, local code, scroll down, tick this button, then next, then description tag. You can just give this as the description should just be something simple like Terraform, right? Then create access key. And now after creating this access key, you also get access to the secret access key and an access key, right? And one thing you should do here is you need to download this .csv file, right? Because this is the last time you ever have access to the secret access key. So let's download this. Okay, so now that we've downloaded this, we can now click on done if we want to. So, but we're just going to leave it on this page. So now we have to come back here to our Terraform, right? And we're going to click on the console. We're going to click on the console. And after clicking on the console, I'm just basically showing you guys how to set up your
Please,
environment.
sorry to cut in. Please, what exactly are we doing? I came in late. Please.
Okay, so this is basically the project that you guys were given.
Okay.
So, like I said, I'm just showing you guys how to set up your environment. So, like,
Uh, Mentor, sorry, talking about the project, is it the one we were given yesterday or the one on the LMS?
yeah, I'm guessing it's one on the LMS.
The
Okay,
one on the LMS.
okay.
So, like I
Yeah.
said, you guys will have to install AWS CLI, right? And doing that, you can also follow this blog on how to do that, or you can just come to your console after everything is working perfectly well and you have opened your your terminal. So you can just do sudo apt update, right, -y. So let's run this. Or if you want to basically read and understand everything, you can just follow this blog that I wrote a long time ago. So this is the blog, right? Create an IAM user with an access key and a secret access key, right? So you can just scroll down and you see the commands to even install Terraform and also install the AWS CLI, which is this. And we have run this command, right? So now we need to run this sudo apt install AWS CLI command, which we are going to copy now. And okay, so this is working perfectly well. Now we're going to paste and we're going to run AWS install AWS CLI. Then after that, the next thing we need to do now is to run the AWS configure command, which will help us configure our access key and our secret access key, right? So that's also what we're going to do. Okay, so I'm going to paste this here, AWS configure, and we're going to run it. And now it's asking us for our AWS access key ID, which we're also going to provide when we come to this access key. Don't forget that we also installed it too, right? Which is download.csv file. Because if you do not download this, you won't have access to these codes anymore. So let's copy the access key and basically paste it here where it's asking for the access key ID. We're going to paste that there and enter. Now it's asking for the AWS secret access key, which is the same thing we're going to do. We're going to copy this and we're also going to come here and we're going to paste it, right? And we're going to click enter. And now it's asking us for the default region name. So what region, it depends on you, what region you are willing to use. But for this tutorial, we're going to be using London, right? Which is it EU West 2? Let's see. Okay, yeah, it's EU West 2. That's for London. So that's what we're going to be using here. EU West 2. And for the default output format, we're going to type in JSON and enter. So after all this, we can just click on clear, right? And we're also going to have to install Terraform also, like I said. And this blog help you with both of those things, right? So our first thing we're going to do is we're going to first copy the key, which is the first one. We're going to basically just copy it like this, copy, come over here and paste it, then enter. Then the second command also, so we're going to copy this and come here also and we're going to paste it and enter. So and lastly we're going to do sudo apt update and sudo apt install Terraform. So we're going to copy this also and we're also going to come here to paste it. And like that we have Terraform installed. If I type in Terraform, then you should see like a list of commands, exactly, init, plan, and every other thing. So like this, we have our Terraform actually working perfectly well. Everything is set, the environment is set. Now what's next? The next thing we should do is basically is our code, right? We need to work on the code, which we are going to be going over to VS Code to work on. So we're going to open up VS Code. And where is basically the questions again they asked. So if I click here, we can see the questions here. We can see the questions here. So I'm going to basically using that for a guide. Okay, so coming back here, we're going to be opening a new directory. So clicking on this top, we're going to select on files, and we're going to open folder. So now that we're here, you just basically choose any folder that is basically comfortable to you. But what I would advise is you choose a folder for those that are going to be using a local machine, which is Vagrant or VirtualBox or either of those local whatever. So you can basically do the create a directory where your Vagrant file is present. Are you getting what I'm saying? So you can just create a directory where your Vagrant file. So for instance, this is where the Vagrant file is present. I can decide to just create a directory here. So let's call this a new directory, a new folder, and call this Terraform, right? And click enter. So now I'm going to select this folder and I'm going to open this folder. Okay, so now that we're on this folder, there are certain things that are very important before Terraform can work, just like Ansible, right? All these tools have some kind of things in common, right? Just like Ansible, there are certain things it must have before it can work. So first off, it has to have like a provider's file. I'm not going to basically explain every single thing about Terraform here because if I do so, we basically just sleep here, right? So for those that have access to Code Cloud and Cloud Guru, you can use that to basically watch and understand everything about Terraform. But for those that don't, I dropped an announced course earlier, so you can also use that also. Okay, so it's saying you have 15 minutes left. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new file. We're going to create a new file. We're going to name this file main.tft. Okay, main.tf, sorry. Exactly. So now that I've created this file, we're going to basically call the provider that we're going to use, right, which is Terraform. Then we're going to close this with curly braces and we're going to type in required providers, right? And what is the required provider, which is AWS? Okay, so AWS, and we're going to call the source is HashiCorp, right, slash AWS. That's basically the source. And next thing we're going to be typing here is the version. What version are we going to be using? So we're going to be focusing on the version 4.0. Is it 4.0 or 5.0? Anyone, right? So we're focusing on the version 5.0, and basically this is what we'll be needing here. So what this tells Terraform is that we're going to be using whatever commands we're writing is for AWS. So they also have the same thing for Azure, GCP, and other cloud providers too, right? But this is basically
Please,
what it
mentor,
is.
where did you? Hello?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the version 5.0, is it the version of the AWS or what?
Is a version of AWS on Terraform, right? This
On
also affects the
Terraform.
kind of commands you can use while running Terraform.
Okay, please, sorry, where did you get the version from? How did you know it's 5.0?
Yeah, this is basically the latest version. So if you come over here to their what's it called,
Okay,
their documentation,
yeah,
Terraform AWS provider, and we click on enter, so we can click AWS provider.
okay,
So wait for this to load. Then we scroll down a little bit. You can see this here. This is the latest version 5.0, and you can see the HashiCorp AWS. So this is basically what
all
you
right,
need, right? To tell
thank you.
Terraform that you're running it on AWS. So now coming back here
All right,
on the main.tf file, we're also going to be stating the provider, right, which we already know is AWS, right? And we are going to be giving it a region. So normally when you in this space, right? So there are different ways you can insert your access key and secret access key. But first, let's focus on the region. The region I'm basically going to be giving this is the same region that I used for my what's it called? For my DigitalOcean server, right? When I was doing the AWS configure, right? The same region. So if I do AWS configure, right? So this is the access key, this is the secret access key. Now see the region I used, EU-West 2. The same region that I'm using here is the same region that I'm supposed to be using here also, right? Which is also EU-West-2, right? And also, if you also want to put your access key, right, you can also insert your access key here. But although it's not a safe practice because you are basically giving the whole world access to your access key and secret access key. So another thing you can do is if you're inserting your access key and your secret access key or your secret key here, right? You basically want to use it as a variable. So you can basically create like a variable file, variable.tf, right? Then states the access key and secret access key inside the variable. Then you can paste the variable here. That's another way you can do it. But basically, we're not going to be doing that here. And the easiest way to use it is just through AWS CLI, which I've already done. So with that said, we have now configured our Terraform provider or our AWS provider rather. So the next thing now we want to do is to create a VPC, right? We want to create a VPC. And how do we create a VPC? So we use the resource module, right? And what is the name of this resource? It's AWS underscore VPC. Are you getting what I'm saying? And now we can now give it any name, right? So we can give this as underscore VPC. Are you getting what I'm saying? So after this, what are the important things you need in a VPC? We'll basically be needing the CIDR block, right? Which is going to be 10.0.0.0 then /16. Then after the CIDR blocks, we will need to enable the DNS support, right? Which is also going to be equal to true. And we also need to enable the DNS hostname, which is also going to be true, right? And after doing that, we can now add tags to our VPC. We can add tags. We can do this, and we can give it a name. Maybe we want to call this as underscore VPC. Same. So now that we've created our VPC, right? The next thing we will need to create also is our internet gateway, because if you know the exact way we create the VPC normally is we normally create an internet gateway for our public subnet. I get what I'm saying. So I'm not guessing we're going to be creating a NAT gateway for this tutorial because we don't need a private subnet for this. It's only a public subnet, so you can access the internet, right? So the same way, resource. Then after the resource, then what we can do is AWS underscore internet, then gateway, right? Then the name we want to give it is as underscore, which stands for assignment internet, then underscore gateway. Then also for our AWS internet gateway, we need to attach it to a VPC, which is this VPC we created here. So what we'll do is the VPC ID, right? And we'll be calling this AWS automatically. You see, it has already brought it out here for me, right? We will be calling this AWS ID. So this is what we created here, and we can still call it here, right? VPC.id, right? So that is basically what we need to attach this internet gateway to this VPC that we created here. Then next off is we need to create tags. So what tags do we want to create? So we want to give a name, and we want to call it as underscore internet, right, underscore gateway, right. So after that, the next thing we want to create is we also want to create a public route table that will help us route traffic. Are you getting what I'm saying? So this resource will be typing in AWS underscore route underscore table, right? And we'll be giving it the name of as underscore or as dash route dash table, then dash public, right? So basically what we'll be needing here is we'll also be needing the VPC ID, right? We'll be needing the VPC ID, which will also be the AWS underscore VPC dot as then dot ID. I will be ending it. Then after that, we'll also be needing the route, the rule of the route. So
Mentor,
yeah,
please, I really want to understand when you're calling the AWS VPC, what's the S stands for?
this is assignment.
Okay,
So it's just the name. It's not part of this. This is the most important thing here. The AWS, whatever you're
okay,
stating, right? This is the most important thing. So this is an internet gateway. This is just a random name. You can name it. I get what I'm saying.
okay,
This is just a random
okay,
name. So
okay.
now coming down to the route, we can state the route like this, and the decider block will definitely be 0.0 because we want to
I'm
connect it
here,
to
guys.
anywhere, right? The 0.0.0 stands for the whole internet, right? This is the public route table, so we want to be able to access the whole internet
Mm.
through our route table. And after doing that, you also want to give a gateway ID, right? Which will also be targeting the AWS internet gateway that we mentioned above here. So this is internet gateway. We
Yes,
will
I
basically
am.
want to target it,
I'm here.
right? So the gateway.id. And sorry,
Catherine, mute your mic, please.
Please, can you mute your mic if you're not on stage?
okay. So now we have the gateway ID, right? Which is from our AWS internet. We need to connect to the AWS internet gateway, right? Because why? The internet gateway is like a gateway. Just think of it as a gate. Once they open that gate, you have unlimited access to the internet. I get what I'm saying. So now we're creating a route table, and that route table is tapping from the internet gateway. That is why we are adding the gateway ID, right? So this is what we have here. Then at the end of that, we basically need to add tags. We need to have tags, and we are going to be stating our tags here. And in our tags, we are going to be giving it a name, and we are going to be giving it a name here, which is as dash route dash table public. Exactly. So after creating our route table, we also need to create our subnet, our public subnet. Remember, I said that we don't need the private subnet. Why? Because every single thing we're doing here is public. We don't basically need the private subnet. So creating our public subnet, we will need to also use the resource module that we used before. Like I said, AWS. Okay. So we need to create the public subnet association first, not the public subnet, right? So we need to associate the subnet to what's it called? And one thing I'll tell you is it doesn't matter. This is not Ansible or this is not bash scripting. It doesn't matter the syntax or the level of how you write it or the hierarchy, right? Terraform will automatically just pick every single thing you have written and deploy it in the way that is right. So it does not matter how you arrange it. Are you getting what I'm saying? So we're basically going to do the route table association first. So AWS underscore route underscore table, then association. Then we're going to be giving it as dash public dash subnet one dash association. Right, so this is what we're going to be giving it. This is the name we're going to be giving it. And under here, we're going to be giving it a subnet ID. And the subnet ID we're going to be giving it is going to be AWS underscore subnet, right? Dot as dash public dash subnet one dot ID, right? And the reason why you're getting this error here or this red line is because we have never created the subnet. I get what I'm saying. And next thing we'll have to do is to also create a route table ID. Okay, okay, okay. So we're basically going to continue while that's join. So like I said, the route table ID is where we're going to be calling this route table created. Where is it? This route table created, right? We're going to be calling every single thing here. So let's just copy this, right? And we're going to basically just paste it here. So route table, and we're going to delete this, put a dot here, remove this also, and remove this also, right? And at the end, we're just going to write dot .id, right? So I'm just going to write dot .id at the end, and this is the route table ID. So what we're going to do here also is we're just going to copy this and redo the same thing again for the second subnet that we're going to be creating. So subnet, just change this to 2 instead of 1, and basically change this also to 2 instead of 1. And we're also going to be targeting the same AWS route table public ID also. So basically that's just it, right? Now the next thing we want to do is to create the public subnet, right? So we're basically creating two public subnets. Are you getting what I'm saying? So resource And here we're going to be doing AWS underscore subnet, right? And what name are we going to give this subnet? We're going to make everything basically aligned. So as dash public dash subnet one, right? Because this is the first subnet that we're creating. This is the first subnet that we're creating, and we're going to be giving it a VPC ID also. And the VPC ID we're going to be giving it is AWS underscore VPC, right? Dot as dot VPC dot ID, right? And the next that we're also going to be giving it is the CIDR block for this subnet, which is going to be 10.0.0, sorry, 10.0.1 dot 0/24, right? So this is going to be the CIDR block for this subnet, and we're also going to do map IP on launch, and we're going to set that to true, and the availability zone, we're going to basically send that to EU-West 2A. Yeah, so, and for the tags also, we are going to give it a name like we always do, and we're going to call this as dash public dash subnet. So you should always let this tag always match this name, like for better purpose. So now that we have given it a tag, a name, and everything is good, we're going to basically move to the next subnet. So I've basically
Yeah, to be
selected
just a
this.
quick question. What is the purpose of a tag?
Well, the tag is just basically like the name that's going to give it. So when the instance or whatever it is you are creating, this is the name that's going to be on top of
Uh,
it. I get what I'm saying.
oh,
When it has launched.
okay.
Yeah.
So the tag is constant throughout the thing, throughout the
The
resources.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
Bento.
Okay.
Yeah, please, which question are we still answering? Is this question number one?
Yeah, this is basically still question number one, because before we even launch the three instances, we need to create VPCs and subnets for the three instances to
Oh,
be launched on. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
okay. Oh,
Yeah. So this subnet, we're basically going to copy this one that we created here, copy it, and we are going to do the same thing under here, Control V, right? And we're going to just change this to 2 instead of 1. Are you getting what I'm saying? Change this to 2, and also change the CIDR block from 1 to 2, right? And also change the availability zone from A to B, and lastly change the tag name from 1 to 2. And that's just it. That's basically it, right? And moving to the next thing that we're going to be focusing on, we're going to be focusing on the network ACL. So resource, we're going to call this AWS underscore network.
Wow.
But sir, hello sir,
Yeah.
hello sir.
Yeah.
Is the name not going to be the same, even though they are going to be two? But is the name not going to be two? Will it not be a conflict?
As yeah, the names are
Yeah,
different.
like these two.
Okay.
No, I'm seeing your okay.
There are
Okay,
two.
this one is
This one
one.
is
This one.
subnet one,
Okay, I
subnet two.
understand.
Okay.
It's okay. I understand. I was thinking you want it to duplicate itself. Yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to be creating subnet the AWS network ACL, which is going to help us also route traffic too. So the VPC ID, right? So we're going to call the AWS dot underscore VPC, right? Then dot ID. Then we'll move to the subnet IDs. right? Because we need to also attach it to the subnet. And we are going to basically use like an array here. So AWS underscore subnet, right? This is the first subnet dot id. Then we're going to use like a comma, and we're going to do the same thing, AWS underscore subnet. Then we're going to tag the second subnet, then dot id. Exactly. So now that we've done this and we have the two subnets already here, the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to create an ingress rule, right? So we're basically going to put this like this, and rule underscore no. Okay, these are just some kind of advanced rules, right? So rules no, we're going to be setting that to 100. Also protocol, we're going to be setting that to -1, and the action, we're going to be setting that to allow. The cider block, we are going to be setting that to 0, since it's a public whatever, as public subnet, 0.0.0/0, right, which means the whole internet. And the from port is going to be 0. Also the to port is also going to be 0. So now that we're done with the ingress, we're going to move to the egress rule.
Mentor, good evening. Sorry, please. We don't need a private subnet, right?
Yeah, we don't need a private subnet. So we're going to call this rule, no, same thing we did there in the previous one, 100 protocol -1. Also action, we're going to give this allow, and the cider block, we're going to call this 0.0.0. Okay, this is O, 0.0.0.0/0, and from port 0 to port, which is also 0, right? So scrolling down here, this is basically everything we need to create our set up our environment for us now deploy the, what's it called, the 3 instances. Are you getting what I'm saying? This is what we need before we can set up the 3 instances. And so basically what we're going to focus on now is we're going to basically be focusing on the 3 instances that we're going to be creating, right? Right, but before we do that, I would like us to create a variable file here. So we're going to just create a new file and call it variable dot tf, right? This is where we're going to put in all our variables, right? So here we will need a variable for the AMI, and we're going to call this AMI, and the variable we're going to be putting here, like a variable default, right? And we're going to be putting our default AMI there, which is going to be Ubuntu, and the type is also going to be string. So this way we're going to be creating more variables too, and we're going to be calling this variable type. This is going to be the type of what's it called, machine that we're launching, which is a t2.micro, right? And we are going to also create a variable, which is the last variable, for our availability zone. right? And we're going to use a type of map, right? We're going to use a type of map, and we're going to type in any here. So the default, so this is like a key value, key pair, or let's say, sorry, map kind of variable format. So if you don't really understand Terraform or anything I'm doing here, please watch Terraform course.
Teddy, a quick question here again.
Yeah,
How you determine what becomes a variable?
what becomes a variable?
How you determine that? I see that you choose. I see the three things that you choose, but there's other things can be
Yeah,
variables, or you just
you can make anything a variable, right? Coming back here,
oh,
right? So let me show you an example. I can decide to make this cider block, right? I can decide to make it a variable. I get what I'm saying. I can also decide to make this particular name a variable, right? I can decide to make this availability zone that is written here. I can decide to make it a variable. Are you getting me? So you can basically make anything a variable. But here, these are just the three variables we're going to be creating here, right? The
okay, thank you.
availability zone and rest. So for this, we're going to be using EU West 2B. Okay, so now that we have our variables set, we need to look for our AMI number, right? So how do we find our AMI number? We have to come to AWS, right? Come over to EC2. Okay, so it seems like this class will have to continue either later this evening or by tomorrow because my battery is really low. It's about 14%. But let me quickly show you guys how you can get your AMI number. Okay, so we go to instances. Okay, so we need to launch an instance, like we want to launch an instance, but we're not actually launching an instance. So scroll down here where you see this Amazon machine image. So that's basically the meaning of AMI, right? So we need to select the image you want to go for, right? Which is going to have to be an Ubuntu machine, right? This is our Ubuntu machine here. And if you look down here, if you look closely down here, you can see the AMI ID here, right? This is the AMI ID for Ubuntu, right? This is basically the AMI ID for Ubuntu, and this is what we want to copy, right? So this is our AMI ID. So we'll have to come over to our variable, and we're going to paste that there, right? So now we have our AMI present, everything is present. So for now, this will be the end of this class for now. We have gotten our variable ready and we have our main.tf, right? We also still need to create our load balancer and the rest. So before
So
I,
sorry, hello mentor, please. Sorry, I joined the class very late. So what do we need the domain name for in this?
okay, so the domain name is going to be where your everything is going to be showing. I get what I'm saying. So when you deploy the HTML that I say you should deploy, it's the domain name you are going to use to check if it works or not. Looking back at this, we were basically able to do the main.tf file where we had our providers and which is AWS, right? And like I mentioned, the region, you're supposed to state it here. And we also created our VPC, we created our internet gateway, we created our route table also. We also did a route table association, right, to both subnets. So we were able to attach our route table to both the public subnet 1 and the public subnet 2, right? And lastly, we were also able to create a network ACL, AWS network ACL, which also helps us in routing traffic. Then after we created the main.tf file, which contains basically almost everything, we now focus on the variable.tf. And like I said, we have our AMI here, and our AMI is basically focusing, like I said, how do we get our AMI? Come over to Amazon, to AWS, right? In your launch EC2 instance section, scroll down a little bit, you hover over Ubuntu, I get what I'm saying, and look down here, you see the AMI ID, right? This is the AMI for Ubuntu. If I select macOS now, then you're basically going to see that the AMI ID is also going to change. You can also still see it here, AMI. Okay, so basically that's how you get your AMI ID. Like I said, you come over to the AMI section, scroll down a little bit, you can see your AMI ID here, right? And if I select the over to Ubuntu, it's going to change. This one ends with C6. This one ends with BC. So there are different AMI ID, and that's basically what we use here, right? For the variable. And also we are going to be using T2 micro because it is free tier. And the availability zones, we are also going to be using using mapping, right, to target these two availability zone, which is EU West 2A and EU West 2B, right? And like I said, the next thing we're basically going to be looking at is going to be the EC2, right? It's going to be the EC2. So we're basically going to create a new file, and we're going to give this file ec2.tf, right? And now that we're giving this file ec2.tf, the next thing we want to do here is we also want to call resource again, and we want to give it AWS. The value that we're basically calling is instance, right? And the name we're going to give it is as-1. We just want to basically follow a particular naming way. So now we're also going to target the AMI, and the AMI that we're targeting, since we already have it as a variable, right? Since we already have it as a variable, we're going to be using var.ami, right? And also the instance type, we are basically going to be using var.type, right? And the security groups, we are going to be using the security group we created in the AWS underscore security, right? So we haven't created a security group yet, but we're still going to create it. So the next thing we're also going to do, right, is we're going to call the subnet ID, and we can use the subnet we already created. So we are basically giving this the public subnet one. We're attaching this first instance to the first subnet, right? And we are also going to be calling the availability zone that it should have, right? Which we already stated. Right? And we're giving it the availability zone A, which is EU West 2A, right? And lastly, we're going to be doing connection, right? So we're going to state the type of connection we want, which is SSH. Also, we're also going to call a host, right? Which is going to be self.public underscore IP. Then the user is going to be Ubuntu because this is an Ubuntu machine. And we also have a private key. So we can state it as a file here, which we will have to make sure that our private key is in the same directory. I get what I'm saying. Is in the same directory as everything here. So how do you create a private key? You go over to AWS, go to the key pair section and basically create a key pair. When you create a key pair, you come over to your Linux machine or to your virtual machine, like Vagrant, right? And come into this Terraform directory. Create a new file. So let's say we create a file here and we call this file root dash server 2, right? London, because this is the London region, then dot .pem, right? So this is our key pair. Let's say we create it here, and note that the key pair you created on AWS has to be the same name as this one that you're creating here. And after I create it here, you can basically just come here to paste all the keys. You copy it, come here, because immediately you create it, it automatically downloads. So you come here and you paste it. So coming back to our EC2, what we can now do is this. Since it's still in the same directory as this Terraform, right? We can come here, do dash root, then dash Terraform, then dash root dash server 2 dash London, then dot .pem, right? So this is basically how this works. And lastly, we also need to add our tags also. So we can come down here, write tags, and we create our tags. We give it a name, and we call it same name that is above as one. Next thing we can do is basically just, if you want, you can also give it a source so we know that it is created by Terraform. So you can just do something like source, and we can basically just state it there, Terraform. So this basically shows us that it is created by Terraform. And the same thing that we did here, we're just going to copy all this and make some changes for the second instance, because you guys were told to create 3 instances. So copy this and enter, then Ctrl V, and we have our second instance. We'll just make some changes, which here to 2, right? The var is still the same thing. The var is still the same thing. The instance type is still the same thing. The security group is still the same. The subnet ID is still basically, okay, it's not the same. We'll be changing the subnet ID to the second subnet. So we want this to be created using the second subnet, right? And the availability zone also will be changed. Instead of A, will be changed to B. Yeah, so that's basically it. So every other thing here will basically seem the same. And instead of,
I hope the class is recording, sir. Sorry.
yeah, the class is recorded. So instead of as one, we're changing this to assignment 2. So same thing again we'll do for the last instance. Exactly the same thing we'll do for the last instance. Control V again. And we'll be changing this to 3 instead of 1. Scrolling down.
Mentor,
Yeah,
The key pair, is it going to work for all the instances?
yeah, basically. You are basically telling Amazon that this is the keeper you're using.
Oh, okay. And even if for Ansible, if we are using Ansible, we can use one key pair for the whole three machines.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right, thank
Okay, so down here also, we can also do the same thing. The AMI is the same, the instance type is the same, the security group is the same, right? And we'll be leaving this one to the subnet one and the availability zone A. Reason because if you basically put everything in the same availability zone, the load balancer won't basically like it won't basically function well because the load balancer needs to be on two different availability zone and two different subnets, right? So that's why we're putting this one on the subnet B, subnet 2, and availability zone B, and these two are basically on the same thing. So I'm guessing that should be all. Changing the name to 3. Okay. Okay, so now since we are basically done with this, the next thing, which is the last step in this file that we want to do now, because they said you should use Terraform to copy the IP address into a file, right? So we want to use the resource, right? And we want to use a particular kind of module called local underscore host or local file, sorry, right? And we want to give this a name of let's say IP underscore address coming down here. And we also want to call the file name. So this file name is basically the destination where we want or the file we want to create. I get what I'm saying. So they said you should create a file named host-inventory. So that's basically what we're going to be doing here. So we're going to do slash root slash terraform slash ansible then dash playbook, which um, very soon we'll create a new directory called ansible dash playbook, right, where we put our ansible configurations, right. Then inside the ansible dash playbook directory, we will now want to create a new file called this host dash inventory, right. And down here we want to basically use a particular method, which is heredocs, right? So we want to use heredocs to basically copy these three IP addresses into this file called host inventory. That is after it has been created. So we'll use content, then end of EOT or EOF, anyone. And here we can basically just do this. Exactly. So we're going to call the AWS underscore instance, right? Dot as then dash one, which is for the first instance that we're going to call the public, right? Then underscore IP, right? So this same thing, we're going to do it for the three instances which help us copy the IP addresses into the file called host inventory. So this is for as one, so we need to do something for assignment 2 and the same thing for assignment 3, right? So this basically helps us with that. So we are not done yet. You also need to still end the file. So basically we'll create a new EOT here also. So this covers this. And with that, we are basically done with this for now, right? We're basically done with this. And the next thing we can do is to basically create the load balancer. So we can come over here and create a new file and call this load bal dot tf. Exactly. Then in the load balancer file, what we want to do is we want to basically create a load balancer and assign every instance to it, right? So we will call this resource, and we're going to call this AWS underscore LB, which stands for load balancer. And the name of the load balancer is going to be as dash assignment dash load dash balance. So now that we have this, we're going to give it a name, which is also going to be the same thing. Okay, we're going to give it we're basically going to add some rules here. So we want to know if it's an internal facing load balancer, which is false. And we also want to call the load balancer type, right, which is going to be application.
Sorry, boss. Why is it false? The internal.
Yeah, because we want it to be a out facing load balancer instead of an internal facing load balancer.
Okay, 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 okay.
Yeah, so we're going to give security group, which we have not yet created, but we'll still create. We give it a security group, and the security group will be AWS underscore security group dot as dash load underscore balancer, right, underscore sg, then dot id. Then after that, the next thing we also want to do is add the subnet. We want to add the subnet, and here is where we add the two subnets that we basically created. That's the AWS underscore subnet, right? So it has already brought it up for me. Public subnet dot id, and the same thing is what we're going to do for the AWS underscore subnet, right? For the second subnet, then dot id, right? So with that, we have created the two subnets. So here we want to do enable deletion protection. I want to give it as false also, and we also want to allow this creation of this load balancer. We want it to depend on the EC2 instance, so we're going to write depends on, right? So we're going to give out all the AWS instance as one comma AWS, you have to leave a space, AWS instance as 2 comma then AWS the last instance, which is the instance 3, right? We want it to basically pause, right? It should not create until these three are created, all these three instances are created. So that's basically what we told it. So next we're going to be moving to the target groups, right? We're going to move into the target group. So resource and AWS underscore LB underscore target, right? LB target groups. So we're going to give this a name of assignment target. Okay. Okay, so assignment target group, that's basically the name we're giving it. And we also have to give it a name here also. So the same name basically. So assignment dash target dash group. And one thing about all this naming is that you need to be very attentive, right? Because if you make a mistake in one of these names that are here, right? If you make a mistake here and you're trying to refer a particular what's it called? A particular resource, you'll be having issue with it. And the main problem will just be basically the name that you created here, right? Like for instance, that's why all the names I've been giving all these are basically very simple names, so that it doesn't really get complex, like as one, as two, as three, like that. So coming back to the load balancer target group, we also need to state the target type, right? And the target type is going to be instance because we're targeting an instance, right? And we're going to give it the port, and the port is going to be port 80. We are also going to be giving it a protocol, and the protocol is going to be HTTP rather. And the VPC ID that we're going to be giving it is the AWS underscore VPC, right? Then as the assignment underscore VPC, then dot ID, right? And also, we're also going to be writing a health check. So the part, the protocol, also the matcher, okay. So after that, we'll basically be focusing next on the listener.
Sorry, sir. Why? Sorry, boss.
Yeah,
Why are we using HTTP, not HTTPS?
I'm guessing HTTP is for port 80.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so we're going to be creating the listener next. So the same method, resource, and we are also going to be giving the AWS underscore listener, right? And we're basically going to be calling it assignment listener, right? And we're going to be providing the load balancer ARN, which is going to be AWS underscore LB load balancer dot ARN. And we're also going to be creating a port for it. And we're going to be giving it a port of 80. And also we're going to be creating a protocol, which is also going to be HTTP. Okay. Okay, so after that, we are going to be creating a default action, and we're basically going to be setting this type to forward. Then so now we will now have to create the listener rule. and listener ARN is going to be AWS underscore LB underscore listener, then dot ARN basically. Then we're going to be giving it priority and giving it an action. Okay, most of the things I'm doing here, most of you might not understand it because you haven't really created like what's it called, load balancers directly from AWS console. So what I would advise is before you even start going through the load balancer part, I really advise that you go through the what's it called, through a tutorial that teaches you how to launch a load balancer, right? So everything looks better understood. So we're going to take in an action here, and we type the same thing forward. Okay, okay. So next thing we'll have to do here is we need to attach the target group to a load balancer. Okay, and okay, so we're going to collect the target group ARN and AWS underscore load balancer underscore target, right? Then dot ARN. Then next is the target ID, and we are going to call AWS underscore instance, which is going to be the first instance that we're targeting, right? And we are going to call a port also, which is going to be port 80. And we're going to basically do this um for all the three instances. So copy this and paste it two more times, 1 and 2. Okay, so this is attachment 1, and yeah, attachment 1, and this is attachment 2, and we're going to change this 1 to 2 because our instance is as 2, and same thing here, 3 and as 3. Okay, and with this we have basically set all our load balancer and every other thing that we're basically going to need for now, right? So far we have looked at the EC2, we have looked at the load balancer, we have looked at the main.tf, right? Next thing we're going to, I've also looked at the variables. Next thing we're going to create now is the security group, which is going to be sg.tf, right? sg.tf, and for the security group, we're basically going to create a security group. So resource, and we're going to call this AWS security group, and this is going to be the as dash load underscore balancer, then underscore sg. This is going to be the security group for the load balancer, and the name we're going to give it is basically the same name. So just copy this, right? And the description is also going to be, you can basically put anything here, right? Okay. Can you guys give me a minute, please?
Yes.
Okay, so back to everything, right? So we're basically deploying the security group, writing the deployment code for the security group. And the last thing here is going to be the VPC ID, which we are going to call AWS underscore VPC that we've already created, then dot ID, right? Then after all this, the next thing we will need to create, right, is going to be the ingress. So while creating a security group, we all know that there is ingress and outgress rule, ingress and egress rather. So from port is going to be 80 because we're opening port 80, and to port is also going to be 80. And we have the protocol, which is TCP, and the CIDR block, which is we want to connect to anywhere in the world. So that's going to be 0.0.0.0, then slash 0, right? So we will have to now create another ingress group. So from port, sorry, can you mute your mic, please?
Please unmute your mic if you're not on stage, bro.
Okay, so this next ingress we're going to be creating is going to be port 443, right? And two ports, that will be same thing, 443, right? And this is also going to be the same protocol, right? Which is TCP, and the CIDR block is also going to be 0.0.0.0 slash 0, which basically means anywhere in the whole internet. So same thing we're going to do here, egress rule. We're also going to create an egress rule, and we are going to call this from ports also, which is 80, and two ports, which is also 80, and the protocol, which we are going to be giving TCP, and the CIDR block, which is going to be 0.0.0.0, then slash 0, right? So this is basically what we just created here, is the security group for the load balancer, right? The next one we're going to create here is going to be the security group for our instances. So we're going to call this resource, and we're going to call this AWS underscore security.
Sorry, boss.
Yeah,
Yeah, this one is egress and the other one is ingress.
yeah.
What's the difference?
One is incoming traffic, then the other one is outgoing traffic. So basically, what we're saying now is
Okay.
we should receive traffic, incoming traffic from port 80 and port 443 from anywhere in the internet. And we can
Ingress.
also give outgoing traffic from port 80 from anywhere or to anywhere in the internet. So that's basically just it. And
Okay, sir.
for the ingress rule, the next thing was we're also doing here for the instance is we're calling this assignment, then security dash grp, So we want to give this a name, and so this is allow underscore SSH underscore HTTP underscore HTTPS. So we're going to give it a description. Okay. Okay, so the VPC ID is also going to be the AWS underscore VPC dot assignment underscore VPC, then dot ID. So right, so dot ID, and just like we did before, all the ingress rule that we did here, we can basically just copy these two, or let's say one, right, and copy. We can come down here and Control V. We have our ingress rule, right, and we can also give this ingress rule a description, which is going to be HTTP, right? Then the front port, two ports, the protocol, the CIDR block is all the same. And lastly, the reason we're going to add here is going to be the security groups, which is going to be the security group we created, AWS underscore security underscore group, then dot as dash load, that's for the load balancer underscore okay. So this is basically what we need to write here, and we are going to copy this also 3 times. So moving to the next, and the next, exactly. So the next one that we're going to be writing, this is port 80, port 80. This one is going to be HTTPS, and this is port 443. Same here, port 443, right? And the same load balancer ID here. Then scrolling down to the last, this is going to be SSH instead of HTTP, and SSH port is what? Port 22. Same thing, port 22. And we have the so for this last one, we basically don't have anything here because this is like an SSH port, and we don't need to connect it to the load balancer. So lastly, we're also going to create the outgoing traffic, right, which is going to be from underscore port, and this is going to be 0, and we're going to create a 2 port, which is also going to be 0, and we're going to create a protocol, which is going to be -1, and we're also going to create a cider underscore block, which we are going to assign to the value 0.0.0.0/0, right? And lastly, we are going to give all this, we're going to give this a tag. So we're going to give it a name first. Okay, so with this, we have basically created a security group. Okay. Um, so the next thing we're basically going to move to, okay, I'm wondering why this is just showing red. Okay. Mm.
Even me, I've been wondering the red lines. It's as if it's not showing error or something. At the first resource where it's showing red line, there is supposed to be a space in between the curly bracket. Maybe that's where the thing is. The SGF, yeah, here, the first line here. Yeah, a space in between the quotation mark and the curly bracket.
Okay, which one is that? Okay, mm, I have no problem
Yeah.
with it. Okay, so we just basically wait like this, then when we're running it, we can basically now see the error from Terraform.
It is
So
have a question. What is the sg.tf for, please?
what's up?
What is the sg.tf file for, please?
This is the security group.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so the next file we're going to create is the Route 53. The Route 53,
Guys, please switch off your mic if you're not.
Route 53.tf file, which will be conducting our Route 53, creating the server, the domain name, and the rest. So the first thing we want to do here now is to create a variable, right? Then the name of this variable, we're going to call it domain name, right? That's the name we're going to give to this variable. Then after calling this variable domain name, we're going to call it default. So we're going to call it default here, and we're going to give this default the exact domain name that you created. Are you getting what I'm saying? This is what we're going to type in here. So if you have a domain name or you have created a domain name, this is what you're going to type in this default. Mine is wopolo.live, right? If you have your own domain name, this is what you're going to put here. And we're going to use the type string, and lastly we're going to give it a description, which is optional, of domain name. Exactly. And we're going to give it a description of domain name. And now we will need to create or get the hosted zone details, right? So we're going to create another resource here, and we're going to call this AWS underscore route 53, right? Underscore zone. Right, we're going to call this zone, and we're going to call this hosted underscore zone. And after we've done that, we're now going to call the name of the hosted zone that we're creating, which is also going to be linking back to the domain name we basically created up, which is going to be var dot domain, then underscore name. Then we're going to give it a tag and environment. We're going to call this the dev environment. You can basically give it any name, right? But like this is just what we want to call it here. So the next thing we need to create is we need to create the record, right? So we're going to give it a resource. Like you said you guys should create like an A record. This is the route 53, then underscore record, right? And the name we're going to give it here is site underscore domain. And we're going to call the zone underscore ID. And the zone ID is basically going to be the ID we created above, right? So this is going to be AWS underscore route 53, exactly. Then hosted zone, then zone dot underscore ID, sorry. So basically this is what it's going to be.
Mentor, sorry to come in.
Yeah.
This A record now, I thought we're going to go and do it in the domain website. So inside Terraform, we can do it.
This is not basically, you're not doing anything regarding the domain website. You basically need to just copy some things from AWS, right? So we have to create like a hosted zone in AWS. So we're going to copy the name
Oh,
servers of AWS to the domain name. And we're going to add the name servers to the domain name so that it can now reflect, right?
okay.
So what we're doing
Okay.
here is just the Route 33 hosted zone. So
So is this Terraform now that after we are through with everything, it's going to bring out the IP of the instances we are creating.
yeah. So after creating this, they said that you should give it a name, the area code. We should give it a name of Terraform dash test, if I'm right. Someone should help me check. Then dollar sign, we'll have to call the variable, which is var dot domain name, right? And we're going to give it a type, which is going to be capital letter E, which stands for a record. And with this, we will now have to create like an alias which will help us connect this to our load balancer. So alias, and we're going to give it a name also of AWS underscore LB, then dot assignment dash load dash balancer, then dot DNS underscore name, right? Then the zone ID, we're going to also give this AWS underscore load balancer dot assignment dash load, right? Then dash balancer, right? Then we're going to call the dot zone underscore ID, right? And the evaluate underscore target health, we should also evaluate target health. I'm going to call this true.
I just pasted it on the chat.
Okay,
Hello, boss. I just pasted it on the chat. Uh, your project is complete when one visits terraform-test your domain.com.
okay, so that's correct. That's correct here. So with this, we're basically done with the domain name setting up and every other thing, right? And what other file do we need to create? Mm, we're done with the main.tf. We've created the load balancer.tf. We've created the ec2.tf. We've also created the route 53.tf. We've also created the sg.tf and the variable.tf. So I just remembered something now. In the variable.tf, we basically need to create a new variable here, right? So we're going to come down here and we are going to create a new variable. And this variable is going to be for our key pair also. So we're going to call this variable key, right? Underscore pair. So now we're going to call a default. Now, whatever value you write here has to be exactly the same name as this key pair you created here, and exactly the same name as the key pair you created on your AWS account. Are you getting what I'm saying? So that is exactly what has to be here. So what we're going to type in here now is going to be root dash server 2 then dash London. This is basically the key pair we're going to type in here, right? Then after typing this here, what we want to do is we want to come back to our EC2 section, right? We want to come back to our EC2 section, and in our EC2 section, we now want to add this, right, as part of our creating our instance, right? So AWS knows that this is the name it should be looking for when it is trying to SSH or when we're trying to SSH. So the key name that we're going to attach here is going to be var dot key pair. So this line is what we're going to copy. Copy this line and add it to all the instances we created. Same thing for the last one. Yeah. So with that, I'm guessing we should be done with all this. And just for fun, we can decide to create a new file and call this outputs, right, .tf. So this is going to show us all the outputs of every single thing when we are done running our Terraform, right? And this can also be helpful because it shows important output. So the first thing we're going to do is output, and the name of the output is going to go the VPC ID, right? And we're going to give it a value here, right? And this value is going to be AWS underscore VPC, then dot ID. Then just like this, we are going to be creating other values also. Okay, so the next important value we're going to be focusing on is the ELB, right? Underscore, that's the load balancer. right? And we're basically going to be calling it from here. So this will be AWS underscore LB, then dot ASS, right? Then load balancer dot DNS underscore name. So basically, this is the tool we're going to be printing out, and with this, I can basically say we are done with the Terraform aspect, right? We're basically done with Terraform aspect. Next thing now we want to do is we want to create a new directory. We want to create a new directory, and we want to call this directory Ansible dash playbook, right? That's what we want to call this directory. Um, right. So now this is the directory where we're going to have all our what's it called? All our commands and everything that's related to Terra, Ansible, and the rest. So, like I said, in every Ansible folder, right, we need to have one important file, which is the Ansible dot what CFG. So we're going to create this and we're going to set it, which starts with default, right? And we're going to give it the inventory. We're going to give it the inventory, which our inventory in this case is called host dash inventory, right? And we're going to give it a remote user, right? Which in our case is going to be Ubuntu. We're also going to give it the as a location to the private underscore key underscore file, which is also going to be tilde slash terraform, right? Then slash ansible dash playbook, right? Then dash root dash server 2 dash London, which is the name of my key pair, right? Then we're going to give it .pem also, because that's a complete file or part to the key pair. So we're also going to do host key checking, and we're going to be setting this to false. And basically, with all this, we're done with our ansible.cfg file, right? With all this, we're done with our ansible.cfg file. The next thing we need to focus on is the um, name of the file, which we are going to be calling new file, and we're going to call this site.yaml. Okay, so first thing first, history and dash, we're going to give it host. Host is going to be equal to all. We're going to use become, and lastly we're also going to use tasks, right, which will start stating all our tasks present here. So firstly, the first thing we want to do is we want to first check the what's it called, the time, or we want to change the time zone of the instance, right, which is going to be changed to Africa slash Lagos. And what we're going to do here is tags. We're basically just going to add simple tags, and we're going to give it time zone, right, and name, which is going to be equals to Africa, and let your Africa be capital letter and let your Lagos be capital letter, because that's basically the only way it can recognize that you are saying or you are referring to African Lagos. So now that we've changed the time zone, the next thing we want to do is to install Apache. So you can also do that by name and install Apache 2, and the tags we're going to give it Apache, and the module which is apt, and name, then the name of the file which is Apache 2. Then lastly we are going to give it a state, latest. Right, so now that I've installed Apache 2, the next thing we want to do the next thing we want to do is we want to make, like they said each instance should have an index, a HTML file, right? Each instance should have an HTML file, and each HTML file should be different from the rest so that you can identify the instance when you load your load balancer and your load balancer lands on a particular instance. I get what I'm saying. So how do we do that? We basically come down here and we use a dash here. So first thing first, we need to use the name. We need to use the name, which is going to be name, and okay, let's leave space here. So this is going to be name. Okay, so is this aligned? Okay, so the name is going to be remove index. So by default, when you install the Apache, by default you have an index.html file installed with it, which is going to be showing you that Apache is installed when you go to your website. So we're going to remove that file. That's the first thing we need to do. So we're going to call it path, and we are going to state the path where the file is actually going to be present, which is var/www/html, then /index.html. Right, and what we want to do is we want to give it a state, right? And the state we're basically going to give it is absent, which means delete the file. And after deleting that file, the next thing we want to do is we want to now create our own, right? Right? Okay, sorry, give me a minute, please. Okay, so back to this. We are basically going to use the printf um, command, right, to basically print our IP address into a file, right? So we're going to use shell for this, and this basically allows us to write multiple commands. So sudo echo what are we echoing? Normal HTML h1, then what do we want to write? Welcome, this is welcome to my page. Welcome, this is my IP, or this is my host name, right? So we basically do something like this, and we want to basically send out this to the /var/www/html, then /index.html. So that's basically what we're going to do there. And next, we're basically just going to copy this and paste it again, because typing that thing is a lot of stress. So paste it again, and the next code we want to input here is not this. Okay, so the next code we want to impute here is going to be the, okay, it's been a while since I've done HTML, but I'm still getting it. This is basically for paragraph, if I'm right. So we also want to do a particular command that helps us print out our host name of our machine, right? This helps us print out our host name of our machine, right? And we're putting that in a particular paragraph. Exactly. So basically what we now to do now is let's see. Okay, I'm guessing this should be like enough, right? This should be like enough. So I forgot to also even add the closing tag here. So closing this. So this should be good. And lastly, the next thing we also want to do here is we want to also write the notify okay, let's see. Okay, so we want to use the notify here, which you say restart, right? Restart Apache, right? And after that, the next thing we basically want to do now is want to call a handler. I hope everybody here knows what the handler is. So the name we're going to give this handler, right, has to be exactly the same name that we gave it here. It has to be exactly the same name. So let's just copy this and paste it. Right, and the service we are using is going to be Apache 2, right, and the state is also going to be restarted. So with that, basically, we can say we have written our HTML and everything to restart Apache and the rest. Okay, we will also add like a tag here. Okay, so okay, so with this I can say we're basically done, right? I'm basically done with this. So we actually forgot one important thing, which is to update and upgrade the servers.
And creating the HTML file that will run inside.
Yeah, we have that already.
Okay.
What about some permissions?
So basically this is everything you basically need for the task. So ansible.cfg is site.yaml.
Please have a question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right. Talking about that key file. Why launching the instance? Like, are we going to AWS to launch the instance?
We are using Terraform. Terraform is launching it for you on AWS.
Okay, then how are we going to get the keys?
Okay, so like I said earlier, when you come over to AWS, I get what I'm saying. When you come over to AWS, you can come to the EC2 dashboard side, scroll down a little bit, right? You see something like key pairs, right? Click on it. Then when you click on the key pairs, you can basically just come here, then create key pair, right? Here you can give the key pair a name, and this name is has to be exactly the same as this name here. So let me copy this. So let's say now I go to AWS and I create a new key pair. It has to be exactly the same thing, right? You must not make any changes to it. If you make any changes to it, there will be an error. You won't be able to SSH into the instance. I get what I'm saying. So now when you click on it, you click on RSA, then you click on .pem, right? We are not using Windows, right? That's why we're not using this .ppk or whatever. We're using like a Linux machine. So this is .pem. Click on .pem, we click on RSA, then root. The name has to be exactly the same. Then after this, you now need to create the key pair. And now immediately I created it, it automatically downloaded here. So if I click on my download, you can see it here. The root server one London whatever. It automatically downloaded. I get what I'm saying. So
Yes, sir.
the next thing you should do is after it has downloaded, you need to open that key pair. You need to open the key pair like this. This is exactly how the inside is going to be. Then you need to copy every single thing here. Copy it. Like I said, in the directory where you have every single thing here, this is the key pair, right? This is the key pair part I downloaded, I created. You can see that the name is still the same thing. It has to be exactly the same thing, right? I'm still going to click on this, come here and paste the key pair here. I get what I'm saying. Now I have my key pair in where it's supposed to be, right? So with that said, hope I've answered your question.
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Are we running the Terraform now?
Okay, so if I want to run it now, I have to basically boot everything up again. So let's see how that works. So let me come over here, go back to DigitalOcean. And the same way I showed you guys on how to install every single thing is exactly what we're going to be doing. Okay, so the account is currently on hold. Let me see if I can use AWS. Hopefully we don't run into any issues on all these cloud providers. So we're going to give this instance a name. Let's call it test. Ubuntu free tier. Let's edit this. Okay, it's working on the default. Not really needed. Select an existing security group. Right. This is a public VPC, right? Okay. Sorry. So let's launch this. Okay, it's asking for a key pair, the one I just created. So let's launch this. Okay, so we're getting like an error. Okay, so let's try to launch it again. Okay, it's basically saying the account is currently blocked and not recognized as a valid account. Okay, so it's like there is an issue with the account that I'll have to reach out to their whatever it is. Is it, yeah. So we can't actually run this, right? We can't run this, but if you guys run it and you have any issue at all, you can basically just send what's it called? Drop your question on the group. The recording of this class is also going to be available, right? It's going to be available to everybody else, right? And there's one thing I want to say, right? And this is basically not going to be for everybody, but this is basically it. If you are a very busy person, right, and you don't basically have time to learn this cloud engineering on your own, jump into the internet to find what works and what doesn't work. What I would advise you to do is this: send me a DM saying you want to join the mastermind, right? The GM can be, I'm interested in the mastermind, and I can tell you more about what the mastermind is all about. For people that are already in the mastermind, they know the benefits that they're getting from it, right? A lot of them are on this call. So you can basically ask them, you know the benefit they're getting from it. So if it's something you're interested in, then reach out to me and we can basically talk about it, right? So like I said, the video to this to this the link to this video will also drop, right? And lastly, to everybody that is watching this currently, I want you to basically do one small favor. So
Hello,
currently,
mentor. Good evening.
yeah, currently we have a, what's it called, a YouTube channel. We currently have a YouTube channel, and if you want to keep on getting more content like this, I will advise you to join the YouTube channel, right? And basically turn on your post notification. So anytime we drop any video like this, you can also get access to it. Here are some of the tasks and assignments that you guys have gotten from old school, right? The solutions are all here. So subscribe to the channel and turn on your post notification. So with that,
Mentor, for those of us that don't have the JIT or pack
okay,
and digital ocean account
okay.
what can we do to
Okay, so I'm
move
guessing
up?
someone actually found a way. Is it Emmanuel? I don't think he's on this call anymore. Someone found a way to getting a free domain name, right? So you can basically paste it in the community group so that everybody else can have access to it. But for those that want something that's customized, you can.
It's me. I
Okay,
have shared it.
okay.
It's me, sir. I've shared it. If you want it, just go to the WhatsApp group and see the video on that I used to get it. So you
Thank
can
you,
just
Mr.
use the
Luca.
video
Thank you.
and then
Yeah.
all right, yeah, get the free domain name.
Okay. So if
Thank
you
you. Thank you.
have any other questions, you can ask now before this class ends. Okay.
For the mastermind, when are you dropping the file, sir?
Yeah. The files drop instantly, right? So for those also that want access to the files,
Okay.
it's only available to those in the mastermind, but everybody has access to the video, right? So that's basically, since no one else has any other questions, I'll basically say this is the end of the class.
No, no, wait, boss,
Jacob,
boss, wait,
Okay.
boss, wait. Oh,
okay.
this, you showed us everything so that this class won't look like the one in our live class in
Yeah,
old school.
yeah.
If some, it's like this thing hasn't been, you did it like halfway like this. When we want to run it now, we will still want you to run it so that we will see how it looks like. Seeing is believing, so that we will see the whole thing. Though we will try to run it too, but when
Okay,
your
so
AWS or your digital ocean is working, maybe we can do another class, please.
okay, you know what? Um okay, let me see if there's
Or
any other question.
possibly maybe one of us, if one of us can share an AMI user ID so that you can use one of our AWS accounts to
Okay.
run it if possible.
Okay, can anybody here create like an easy I am user?
Maybe that one
I
could be
have,
cannot
I am,
launch am.
I my own. I have created my I am user since when I
Okay.
created my account.
Okay, so the only
Yes.
thing I showed you guys how to create an I am user. Sorry, right? I showed you guys how to do it. So you can just create one with only CLI access. There's even a blog here that shows you step by step how to do it, right? So you guys can basically do that, and anybody that basically comes up with one as quick as possible can send it to me. Then tomorrow or so, we'll basically have another class.
All right, can I go ahead with my
Okay.
question?
Yeah.
Okay, so um I want to understand the mastermind group and the what are the benefits for we that are not just only on the community but also on other groups. What are the benefits? Because it seems the only people benefiting from everything is the mastermind.
Yeah.
So
So
I'll be really, really happy to throw more light here.
yeah. So the people that are actually joining the what's it called, the A Cloud Guru group and the Code Cloud group, right? Because they are basically like two groups apart from the mastermind, right? Rather three, right? So the A Cloud Guru group is basically for those that just want access to A Cloud Guru. Are you getting what I'm saying? Access to A Cloud Guru and
Okay.
Code Cloud, right? And also a mentorship too, right? In case you have any questions on any topic, I can also explain it better to you. But that is way different from the mastermind. In the mastermind, you have live classes. Are you getting what I'm saying? That basically teach you certain topics. You get access to projects, you get access to um, projects, you get access to live classes. Yeah, I'll come back to you, please. We get access to projects, get access to live classes, we get access to classes that help you with your old school projects, exams, tasks, and certain things like that. So the mastermind is not basically based on old school or whatever, right? It's something that will still keep on going on, right? Even old school is over. So it's basically a whole guide that helps you throughout your whole cloud journey. I don't know if you understand
Oh,
what I
I
mean by
get.
it, right? So
Yeah,
even if you
I
are done
understand.
learning every single thing, the mastermind will still be there to guide you when you are trying to apply for a job, when you are trying to get a job. So I don't know if you understand that, right? The project,
Yeah.
all the whole skills, every single thing you will need. That's what the mastermind is for, right? Then the
Oh,
community group is just an open group, right? Where like-minded people come together, we drop content, helpful information, right? And also we drop some kind of knowledge too. Okay, hope I've answered your question. Okay, so this call is going to end in any time soon. So if you are interested in the mastermind, right, and it is something you would love to go for, you don't really have enough time, right, and you really want someone that can mentor you throughout your whole program or throughout your whole journey being a cloud engineer, right? I would really advise that you join the mastermind because there are students there that are even giving a lot of testimonials. So it's not even like as if I'm the one coming out to speak on it. You can ask them also. All right. We have classes, weekly classes every week that explain certain topics, come together and basically give you a better understanding. Are you get what I'm saying? So if you're interested in the mastermind, you can basically just reach out to me on WhatsApp, right? Reach out to me on WhatsApp and chat me up. We can talk more about how you can get better and how the mastermind will be a very good fit for you. So lastly, don't forget to subscribe to the Cloud Top G YouTube channel.